Hello and welcome back to another episode of Headstrong. My name is Louis Strong and I'm the host of this podcast. On this show, I sit down with people in the public eye to talk to them about their lives and their careers. But importantly, I like to talk to them about their vulnerabilities and understand what the word headstrong means to them. On today's episode of Headstrong, I sat down with Felicity Hayward. Felicity is a plus-size model, but an absolute advocate for body positivity, with her brand new book out, which is very, very exciting. We sat down to talk about her new book and how it's inspiring her sister, of course, but importantly, this young generation to embrace themselves and love themselves. So I really, really hope you enjoy this episode of Headstrong. But first, a note from our sponsors, RCK Partners, who specialise in helping UK businesses claim R&D tax relief across the engineering, agricultural and tech space. If you'd like to find out about this valuable source of funding for your business, head to rck.partners or follow the link in the podcast description below. That's rck.partners. Felicity, thank you so much for joining me on Headstrong. How's it going?
I'm good, babe. It is Monday morning. I've not long been up. I'm not going to lie to you.
Well, why not? Why not? So when I was researching this episode and finding out more in detail about you and stuff, I've got to say, first of all, how inspiring you are as an individual. I watched your TED Talk, which I thought was absolutely brilliant, and I can thoroughly recommend that. So I just wanted to say awesome stuff and all the work that you do, which we will discuss in great detail in this podcast. For those listening who don't know who you are, how would you describe yourself and the work that you do?
I am a plus-size model, but an OG. I've been doing it for a long time and was, one of the first of my age to be pushing that narrative over here in the UK. I also am a new author, which is exciting, and I've been sort of pushing the narrative of self-love, self-confidence and wellness within bodies.
And we'll discuss your book in great detail as well later on, but that's called Does My Butt Look Big in This? And that's kind of described as a body positivity manifesto, which is cool, very cool.
Thanks.
Yeah, I really like it. But the first thing that comes to mind in the kind of public sphere when we talk about that is Love Island.
Yeah.
Now, I can't say I watch it, but when I say the words Love Island to you, how does that make you feel in terms of your ethos and body positivity and what you stand for?
I just think it is a modern show that is very outdated within beauty standards. I think it does more harm than it does good. And I was literally saying this at a festival this weekend. So, I've been doing this job now for a decade, and every year I see a new wave of Love Island contestants attend all of the events that, I go to. And I just think, just to stop you there, can you hear that in the background?
No,
that's for some reason someone's just decided to do building work.
No, it's all good. I can't hear anything.
Can't hear it. Okay. I'll stop in case you can hear it. But yeah, every year I see this new wave of influencers who come from Love Island, and the problem that I have is that a lot of these people that go on Love Island, they all look the same aesthetically, and they're easily replaceable. And I don't mean that in a, I have friends that have, I've made friends that have been on the show, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but I think at the core, the show is producing something that I don't think is sustainable, whether that's in body image and people's careers. And it's creating so many mental health issues because, like I said, I went to a festival this weekend and I see the new wave of all these people. I don't know who they are because I haven't watched it. And I'm like, this is the new crew of Love Island from this year, and they'll be forgotten about next year when the new Love Island crew come in. And what is that doing to those people? Like, I'm worried about the people that go on Love Island as much as I am worried about the young minds that are watching it and being influenced by it. You know, there is one body image ideal on that show, and everybody is the cookie cutter version of themselves. They show no diversity. They show an inch of diversity. They try with race. You know, they might put a black girl and a black guy in, and that's it. You know, they put someone in who was deaf, I believe, in maybe the last series or the series before. Like, they literally sprinkle something in, and it's just embarrassing. It's like the whole world isn't, you know, a size 8 you know, white girl with, you know, veneers and big lips. Like, and like I said, it's nothing against the people that go in. Like, they have pressures themselves to attain and look like this. And like, it's a much bigger picture. It's like, you know, it's what society deems as beautiful and what shows like this push. And if, you know, the show was more diverse and had all different bodies and all different, you know, sizes and backgrounds and abilities and genders, then like we'd be looking at the real world. But we're not. That they're selling a fantasy of something which is damaging to people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think something that you said as well about the sprinkling of diversity that they do, but then they try and celebrate that sprinkling to a point where it's over exaggerated.
Yeah.
Which is a real shame. But then also furthermore, talking about that underrepresentation of what the British public truly is. So when I was doing my research for this, well, obviously I know for a fact that I don't walk around with a six-pack with my shirt off every day. But also in terms of women, the average UK dress size is a size 16. And when you look at, as you say, look at the cast of that, and as you say, also, it's nothing against these people. It's what the show is trying to promote. It's the people far higher than them, and what unfortunately has become what might be deemed as a social norm. But it's misrepresenting what normal truly is. Yeah. How do we combat that then?
Don't watch Love Island. It's difficult because they've created this show that's like extremely successful. I tell you how we can combat it, and I'm really looking forward to this show coming back on the screens, is Big Brother. And I was up till like 2:00 last night on TikTok watching old Big Brother clips. Now that show is coming back on, and that is for me the original like reality TV show. And I hope that they are going to put people, they're going to take a completely different a different page from Love Island and go back to the Big Brother roots of having everyone from every background, and it being a real sort of like you know, the British public. That's what we want. We want to see a range of people. And I hate using the term diversity, because the term diversity should not exist, because the world is diverse. Like, we shouldn't have to be making a scene of it. So I actually don't like that term, but I have to use it because we're still not there. I'm hoping that Big Brother have casted a really, really great group of people, and that, you know, we all watch that and think that's how this country looks, and that's how we want to, you know, celebrate shows that are going to happen regardless if we want them to or not. So I'm just praying Big Brother brings back this you know, fun reality again, rather than this sort of, you know, one that's just created just for, you know, if we watch Big Brother and it's full of people wanting to be influencers.
It's very easy to see as well, isn't it? Yeah.
So
fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Positivity. Here we go. So if we transition that over now to the fashion industry, and we look at that from when you started, though, obviously the people like to know about, like to hear about how you got scouted, because it's a great story.
Yeah.
Do you mind retelling that for me?
Yeah, of course. So I was scouted in an East London pub, dancing to Diana Ross, and got asked to do a shoot as the late, great Anna Nicole Smith. And I was just having a great time with my friends. And I just thought, you know what? My nan will love to see these pictures of her granddaughter, who she's always just, she's been like my absolute rock from my whole life, from my childhood to now, of being like the person that really made me confident and sort of helped me push that sort of the confidence and self-love within myself. But I just thought, you know, my nan's gonna love these pictures, like let's go for it. And we did the shoot. It was like crazy hours, like 18-hour long, 20-hour long day. And there were security guards there who were looking after the diamonds. I just thought this was the most incredible thing I'd ever done. And I just saw it as this is just a shoot. Like I'm never going to be a regular model. It didn't even come into my brain, because I am doing a sort of, a homage to Anna Nicole Smith, who's a curvy blonde. So I was like, this will just be one thing. And then when it came out, it went viral, because that photographer had never used a curvy woman before. He'd always used, very sort of size 4, size 6 women. And the industry over here started to shake up, going, oh, hang on a minute. If he's used her, maybe we'll use her and see what this gimmick is. And it was a gimmick at the beginning. And now 10 years later, look at the industry.
So when you started out, and I've read, you've said before, and we know there was a distinct underrepresentation of plus size models, and notably on the high street when it came to clothing and shopping and getting things off the hanger. What do you think has allowed that progression to change in that regard?
Well, I think more brands, more brands creating plus size collections. I also think social media is probably the biggest thing in this, because, when I started, it was a reaction of people online going, oh my God, a girl of your size is like being shot by this photographer, and like in these campaigns. And I think the reaction from people on social media created such a buzz that the industry started to listen. I mean, started, like they sort of dribbled in work throughout the last 10 years. But like, I think it was sort of like when I became a model, I was broke for the first 2 years, because there was just not enough like work for me. And people listening in, like, when you're a model, there's 2 types of jobs you do. You do commercial or you do editorial. So commercial is when you're working for brands and like, high street brands and beauty brands and whatnot. And editorial is when you do the fashion magazines. You notoriously do not get paid. I think it's something stupid, and I don't know if this is still to this day, but it was an ongoing thing years ago that if you did the cover of Vogue, you got paid £1.
What?
Yeah, it was something crazy like that. Like, I could be wrong now, but it was like back then. It was like, seen as, if you do if you have the cover of Vogue, like it's it's iconic. It's you should be grateful.
It's outrageous.
What I did at the beginning was, obviously I did not do the cover of Vogue, but any sort of editorial stuff you do, it's just it's even to this day, it's just seen as publication and press. So you pretty much work for free. So I was skint for the first few years, and it wasn't until the brands started to really listen. I mean, I still think it's crazy now. Like, when you look at the plus size industry, the last time I checked, it was worth something like 7 billion in the UK, right? Wow. And it's growing every single year. And not to be rude, but like, when people create brands and businesses, the ultimate goal is to be successful. Whether that's you're a charity, but even if you're a charity, your goal is to raise funds to make change. And if you're a business, it is to make money. So why are all brands not catering to plus size? It is worth billions of pounds. Like, do you know what I mean? When you say it's like, oh, I'm going to start a business, but I'm just going to exclude a whole demographic of people and just lose billions of pounds because it's not, it's not really worth it for me. And that's where it comes. It's just all these old school people that are in positions of power who dictate what they believe is beautiful. And I think the old CEO of Victoria's Secrets is someone that has massively screwed up with what he did with that brand. Like Victoria's Secrets, they used to be the pinnacle of fashion and just sort of like beauty, these like very, very tall, thin women that would walk the catwalk and do these big Victoria's Secret show. And it was, all about one man's ideal of beauty. And he said, trans women and plus size women will never be seen on the catwalk like this. And, he said some really, really messed up things. And I'm not being funny, Victoria's Secret they got ridiculed online, and they've tried to turn it around, but it's not the same. And that's, again, that is the power of social media and the power of people. And I think I've gone on some long tangent here, but like it can make a huge impact on things for the rights of things to change. So, yeah.
Love that. So when you, going off the kind of discussion of brands there, then are you very conscious? I mean, maybe at the beginning, I don't know. I'm actually interested to hear what you say. Are you now more selective of who you work for? Because back in the beginning, if you were so skint, I guess ultimately you're probably not going to turn too many down, I guess. You know what I mean?
Again, at the beginning, it was also exciting for me as a woman because the high street was opening up to more clothes for me. So, my nan would make all my clothes and we'd go vintage shopping and charity shopping, and it was exciting. So any brand at the beginning, I was really keen to support, no matter if their clothes weren't that great, because I was like, yes, you're listening, like, let's push this. But yeah, of course, now I'm, very lucky to be in a position that I can choose who I want to work with a little bit more than I did at the beginning of my career. But the same thing, I do like to support any brand that is, pushing for that size increase and inclusivity. So, yeah.
Before we go on to talk about the self-love then, and of course your book, can we talk about growing up and what that was like for you as an experience? When did you first become aware of your own mental health when you were growing up?
Do you know what? I had this conversation recently because there's been some family issues. Everyone's going through family issues, but can you hear that? Or is that okay?
All good.
That was really loud. Okay. I had the discussion with some of my family members the other day because we're going through some family stuff at the moment, and there is a funeral coming up in 2 weeks, and the dynamics of everyone is just sort of like, it's becoming a bit of a headache. And certain people don't speak to people. I won't name names in case they listen, but one member of my family, she is 21, and I'm in my 30s. And she grew up in a different time to me where mental health matters and things were spoken more about. So the younger generation, so not my generation, but that younger generation, they have been exposed to so much stuff online in a positive and a negative way. But in the positive way is that, they understand what gaslighting is. They understand, what depression is. They understand all of these key things that, they're speaking up about autism and ADHD and like all these other like neurodivergent, like they're speaking up about all these things. And I didn't have that when I was growing up. We didn't have access to these pages and these, we would have had access to books, but it wasn't the normal sort of thing to be speaking about. So we just kind of got on with it. And I find that quite strange because I know I'm kind of going off a little bit now, but, at the moment, everyone's talking about ADHD and how like a lot of us, especially women, feel like we've never been diagnosed properly because it was only ever seen when we were younger that ADHD and stuff was focused on boys. And it's funny you should say that because before I was a model, I was training to become a primary school teacher, and I was working at a special educational needs school, behavioural school for boys. It didn't exist for girls. And, that was not that long ago. And mental health really didn't, for me, if I'm being completely honest with you, I haven't really thought about it until I'm an adult. Maybe in the last 5 years, and that's quite crazy that you sort of grow up as a teenager and as a young adult, just sort of getting on with it, just getting on with any sort of trauma or stress that you've dealt with. And I started therapy the start of this year, and for years and years and years I thought, I don't need therapy, I'm too strong, I don't need to be speaking to someone, I'm not trying to cause myself pain or physical pain, I don't need therapy. And actually, now I'm in therapy, everybody should have it if they have access to it. And that's something that I wouldn't have spoken about when I was younger, because I wouldn't have wanted to be seen as weak. Whereas you look at, my younger family member, and she's like, oh my God, I had therapy when I was 13 and it's the best thing I've ever done. And she normalised it. And I've only just started to normalise it in my 30s, because we grew up in that generation where it wasn't.
Yeah, you were told to stiffen the upper lip. You were told to, particularly in my case, to man up. And just get on with it. And as you say, if you showed weakness, it was you looked vulnerable and weak, and you would be judged for it. Whereas now there's a community, specifically, as you say, pages and pages online that will give you support and a sense of community.
Yeah, and it's strange because, I got catapulted into a fashion industry, this industry that didn't accept me. And I almost wasn't accepting myself either. And I just sort of had to just deal with everything that got thrown at me, because I could see that it was having a positive impact on other people. And I didn't really look after myself at the beginning, because I was so focused on, oh, wow, this is a new situation where I'm very lucky and very lucky to be put in. So I need to sort of focus on everyone else.
Yeah, I get that. So you put other people ahead of you.
Yeah. So I don't think I really started to think about mental health until a few years ago.
So when you look back at school, how do you reflect on education as a whole for you? And then we'll talk about education kind of now.
School, I was just really in my own little bubble, if I'm being completely honest with you. I was a little punk.
Were you?
Yeah, I was a little punk. I just sort of I was really, really into music and going to gigs and bunking off school and getting a train to certain gigs in London. And I really was just sort of in my own bubble, really. I sort of kind of got on with different friendship groups, but yeah, I knew I just didn't want to be in my hometown. So I sort of put my head down and just, yeah.
Was that kind of a matter of you doing it yourself, or did you feel ostracized by groups?
There was definitely the mean girls in every school. I think that exists to now. And I do remember there was a certain group of girls who just, the mean girls, I just thought they were better than everyone else. And
I always think about that select group of people as well from school, and they thought they were, the world revolved around them. But in that little bubble of a school, and then they get out of school and they don't have anything.
Yeah.
They've been so interested in their social situation.
I always say this, and I think everyone can relate to me. And I don't know much about you and your school and whatever, or how popular in school, but if you were popular in school, you peaked way too early.
Yeah.
Do you agree with me? I know we 100%. Don't really know each other, but all the popular people at school are, they're usually still in the hometown, still have have a great job and family and whatever, but they sort of I have a story about when I went home for Christmas. There was a certain year, there was these sort of group of girls when I was younger. They weren't just particularly very nice, they were just bitchy. They just were just, yeah. I remember I came home for Christmas and I went out to my local nightclub, as we do, and I'd just become the face of TK Maxx, which was a huge, huge deal back then. And also, my hometown had just got a TK Maxx. And I was just really happy that my nan would be able to go in and see my face in the store. Like, it was so, like, such a weird thing, especially back then. And I was at the bar and I was ordering a drink and I could see these girls, like, 10 years later, whenever, from school, maybe a little bit less. And they're walking towards me and they're like, oh my God, hi, Flick, how are you? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking, are you actually joking? Like, oh my God, like, you're like modelling now, and like we've seen you in like TK Maxx. And the thing is, when I was younger, it's like all those girls wanted to become models. Like, they were so desperate to be like part of a beauty ideal, which back then was very, very thin. And I'm obviously a curvier woman. And I remember the barmaid was like, oh, what do you want? And I was like, have you got any champagne? And she was like, we only have Bollinger. And I was like, that'll do. And the girls next to me like, oh my God, like, she's buying a champagne. This is so cool. And I get my card out and I'm like praying because I haven't been paid. Like, I think people think with models, right?
Yeah.
It's not, when you get paid for jobs, it can be up to 90 days for you to get paid. Like, it's like if you're a freelancer, like shout out to you, like chasing invoices is like so stressful. And I like put my card down going, I don't know if I have £45 in my account. Like, I spent all my money on my Christmas presents for family. And, it went through and I was like, oh my God. They're like, how many glasses do you want? I was like, oh, just a straw. Put the straw in the bottle, turned around to the girls and was like, Merry Christmas, and walked off. And I felt like such, like, I don't know, this sort of rush of adrenaline of like, you can be a weirdo in school and be successful, and you shouldn't judge people by the way they look and act and dress. And I felt really empowered in that moment. But now I look back on it, and when I really, really think about it, it's like, yes, those girls weren't great, but also at the same time, they would have been dealing with their own insecurities, their own pressures. They wanted to get into the industry in a time when the industry did not accept anyone. I was very lucky that I managed to get into this situation, but like, they're all going through their stuff as well. And maybe if the industry was more inclusive, those girls would have been more kind to everyone else in school because they wouldn't have been feeling a certain way. So although at the time I was like, this is amazing, I was thinking, we've all got the same problem. Ultimately, it's just how you choose to treat others.
Yeah, you've all got we all have these insecurities. There's a feeling of shared insecurity, but exactly as you say, you show it in a different way. And it's that just the specific groups of people at school. I can just see it so vividly now. And just the way that they behaved, but actually deep down they were probably just as, insecure as well. If you're looking to take advantage of R&D tax credits to boost your business's cash flow, RCK Partners can help you. Simply head to rck.partners or follow the link in the podcast description below to learn more. That's rck.partners. Now, let's get back to the podcast. When you look at school nowadays, then, with social media, phones, I mean, we talk about one of your family members going to therapy at 13, which is obviously great. But there's this big whirlpool almost of judgment readily available at the palm of your hand. But also there's still that luxury of, countless charities that have 24/7 hotlines and, pages where you can find communities. What do you think it would be different now if you were at school for you?
Yeah, I think, like you said, the access that like young people have is brilliant. But equally as well, when I went to school and I dressed up for the day and put my Dr. Martens on and made my hair into a mullet and wore my punk badges and stuff, I was going, I wasn't trying to look like anyone else. Maybe I was trying to look like the people in Kerrang magazine or something. But like, now I didn't have access. I had a mobile phone just, that didn't even take pictures. It's like comparison right now is an absolute, killer, because people are now able to sort of have access to all these things, but equally also have access to all of the bad stuff. So there's, it's really difficult. It's like, you can't have one without the other. And where do you find balance in that?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So when we look at yourself then now on social media, you've got a big following. Do you feel responsibility about everything that you post, or and kind of what you're doing on there and showing your awareness on there?
I definitely think I have responsibility, and I think everybody who has a platform that they use for work, anybody that's in a position of influence, whether that's a celebrity, a YouTuber, blogger, a musician, if you are selling product and selling an ideal on social media, you have to take responsibility for your actions. It's the same as, influencing world now, and it's just marketing. And, when you market something to a group of people, whether it's in a magazine, and I always compare it to the food industry, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's just say you have a bag of sweets, right? You have a bag of sweets, and you are promoting this bag of sweets to the consumers. You have to say every single ingredient that's in that, because if you say one ingredient that's not included, someone could become poorly. They could, get sick. All of these things, and if you are an influencer and you're promoting stuff, you have to tell the truth behind things, which a lot of the time people do not. And that's where I have an issue with. It's like, if you're in a position of power and a position of influence, you have to tell the truth to your audience. And we have a lot of people who are not. And that's where the responsibility gets, blurred. And it's not difficult to tell the truth. And people respect you more for doing that. And if you aren't telling the truth, you can cause some serious damage. One family in particular, whose bodies have caused a worldwide body image scandal, essentially, have created this narrative that, certain bodies are better than others, which is just another thing that's happened over the last at least 100 years. And, when they lie about having these alterations done to their body, and this isn't just them, it's other influencers as well. When you lie about having these things done, you have young people going on and trying to attain and have the same body image as you. And when they don't do it, they go to a dodgy surgeon. And we've got cases of, young people going to get these Brazilian butt lifts done by non-professional surgeons, because these people online are not telling the truth. And these people are dying of infections.
Mm.
It's crazy.
So when you are on your social media, yes, you're using it as a tool, because ultimately it is part of your business as a self-employed model and kind of author, etc., etc. But you must still, from time to time, get messages, comments, ultimately trolls, leaving kind of these nasty comments. How do you tackle that sort of thing?
Do you know what? It's an ongoing question. It's like, trolls are there because we've not got there properly within the industry to include everybody. People troll because they don't understand. People troll because they're dealing with their own insecurities and they can't understand how someone else could be happy within their own self. It's such a gross culture to be, people wouldn't say this in real life, but they're using these platforms just to take out their own hate. The majority of the time, I do just delete and block. There's also on social media, Instagram, you can restrict people.
Mm.
So restricting, if people listening in don't know about it, it means that you can block anybody else who's following you from seeing that person's comments, but the troll themselves will still believe it's on there. So sometimes when I'm getting trolled and I delete and block. They take that as any reaction is, a reaction. So they'll like
almost a victory, perhaps. Like, oh, I've ruffled their feathers or something. Do you know what I mean?
So they then create new pages to then just do it again and again and again. So the restrict button is actually quite good because they think that their comments and stuff are still up when actually the only people that can see them are them and yourself. But that's if you can deal with, still physically seeing them. It's different for everybody, but, the more we push the narrative of inclusivity, hopefully in the long run, the less trolling there will be.
Absolutely. Now, this brings me neatly on to your book, which is, as I said earlier, a body positivity manifesto. Who is it aimed at, first of all, when you wrote it?
My little sister.
Amazing. And how old is she?
She's 21.
Oh. Amazing. No. But what was the purpose of it? Is it to inspire? Is it to assist? Is it to aid?
Do you know what? It's a little bit of everything. So the book itself was to, my route into the fashion industry is not a normal way. I didn't ever want to become a model. And it didn't even cross my mind that it was even a possibility due to the fact of the way the industry was and how not inclusive it was. So I wanted to show and give people an idea of how I got into the industry and how I navigated it as a plus size woman with everything thrown at me. And also to tell you all about the secrets and stuff they don't tell you about in the industry and all the messed up things that I have no issue with speaking about because, I was training to become a primary school teacher. So I don't care about being popular or doing the right thing, which is the wrong thing in the industry. And I just wanted people to open up and understand that the reason why you might have all of these issues and body image issues when you go on the high street and can't find your size is because there is a thing called vanity sizing, which is, for people that don't know, a lot of high street brands are doing this thing called vanity sizing when, let's just say you're a size 16 in a shop, they are basically lowering their sizes on the label but keeping the same measurements. So for example, you're a 16 in one shop, you go in another shop and it's the same measurements, but instead of a size 16 they're putting a 14. So when you are shopping on the high street, you're going around and let's just say you're a 16 in one shop, you're an 18 in another, you're a 20 in another, and you're a 14 in the other, the chances are you're going to spend all your money where you appear to be lower. And all these things people don't know. And it's not just for younger people, but it's, it's for mums and aunties and nans, because it's not always just the young people that are suffering body image. And I just wanted to give people an insight to what I have learned, and then also giving them sort of steps of how I've self-taught myself to become confident and how what things I do to bring myself joy and ultimately my experience from seeing other people in their 70s on the beach in a bikini and they're swimmers having the best life and enjoying themselves and looking at the world going, why are we not there with this sort of contentment that these older people have? And they've gone through all their lives of all the different trials and tribulations, potentially had kids, dealt with trauma, dealt with death, dealt with marriage, birth and all this other stuff, and they're finally enjoying their holiday in their 70s and feeling content. We should be having that feeling from now, and just not listening to all these things that are thrown at us. So I want the book to be this sort of manifesto, but also a self-help book, but also a bit of an eye-opener to the industry.
Amazing. Fantastic. Well, congratulations on it once again. I think one of the questions I really wanted to establish is, what does identity mean to you? Because there's so many different branches and aspects of what that word could mean, be that your class, what school you went to, indeed what color your skin is. But because identity captures so many things, but what's your kind of understanding of it?
I think identity for me is what are the things that bring you happiness? You know, your identity is ultimately all those things that you've just said, but what makes you you are the things around you that bring you happiness. You know, and you shine the most and you're the best version of yourself when you're doing something that you love, or you're surrounded by people that you love. So my identity, I think, like, although I probably want to say it's you know, bleach blonde, mullet wearing, leopard print, Rod Stewart loving, pina colada, seaside babe, yeah, that's how I would say my identity is. But when you actually deep those things that I've just said, it's all to do with things that bring me joy.
Yeah.
So I think my identity would be the elements of everything around me that bring me joy.
Brilliant. I love that. So what does the future hold for you then? We've got the book out, and then I have no doubt that the Self-Love Brings Beauty movement will continue, as the sign behind you says.
Oh, my knee,
by the way, love that.
Not on. I mean, the Self-Love Brings Beauty is just, I started that as a little movement back in 2015 when I just kept getting asked the most mind-numbing questions from journalists, you know, about my... Do you know what is crazy? I did a campaign for MAC Cosmetics and they hadn't used Plus before. And this interviewer, this guy, was just sort of like so confused as to why I was in the position that I was. And when he interviewed me, he didn't ask me anything to do with the brand or the makeup or anything. He just was like, so how much do you weigh? What do you eat? What's your diet like? And I was like,
what?
I just was like, do you know what? If this guy, this has got nothing to do with what we're saying, and you're just pushing, you're trying to make me feel like crap. I was like, if this guy had self-love within himself, he could understand everyone would bring beauty. That's sort of how it started. I was like, I just need to push this message. And that message will continue throughout now and the future of my career. It's just it's a statement of, like, you know, finding joy and self-love and acceptance within yourself. But, you know, I'd love to write another book.
Amazing.
You know, I'm just sort of at the moment, I'm just going with the flow. I think the last couple of years have obviously been manic for all of us. And it's just finding my feet again. So the book was amazing. And yeah, just, to be continued.
My final question that I ask every guest is, what does the word headstrong mean to you?
Headstrong, I think, would, for me, the first sort of thing that comes into my head, having empathy for people. I think if you want to be headstrong about something and you want to be able to navigate your life and be that strong character, you have to have empathy for people. Lovely.
I love the word empathy. I think it's a great word. Thank you so much for joining me. I really, really appreciate it. I wish you all the very, very best, and have a lovely week.
Thanks, darling. Take care.
And that concludes this episode 3 in season 8 of Headstrong. A massive, massive thank you to Felicity for joining me on the show and telling me her story, how she got into modelling, and ultimately all the hard work she's doing. And of course, inspiring us to realise that Instagram isn't everything. Now, if you did enjoy this episode of Headstrong, please do subscribe, rate, share it with your friends and family. It all means a lot. So please do subscribe and come back next week for another episode of Headstrong.